for the operators out there, it's all the things we just talked about, from capitalization to property management to insurance. On the coastal properties today, those rates are just skyrocketing in the Southwest, Houston, Phoenix, Florida. As everybody knows, we were just looking at a property yesterday in San Antonio, and this isn't going to be any better. So just make sure you continue to be properly insured.
As an operator, I know other investors are romanticizing multifamily investing, and I'm looking to learn from other investors' mistakes. I know you are too, and you found the right place. Welcome to Myers Methods Presents Multifamily Missteps. Hey, everybody, and welcome to Myers Methods Presents Multifamily Missteps. I'm your host, Jerome, and I've got the pleasure of having Randy Langenderfer with me today. Randy, how are things down just south of Houston, Texas?
Houston, Texas. That's where I'm at. Actually looking out the window today for Houston this time of year. It's rainy, cloudy, and we've been kind of having like the summer monsoons, I'll call it. But Jerome, it's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity and hope we can build some value into your listening audience.
Man, well, that's always going to happen. Anytime we have a misstep, we can learn something. So, do me a favor, tell the listeners a little bit about your background. How'd you get into multifamily?
Thanks. So, Jerome, I'm, as I said, currently live in Houston, Texas. I got into the real estate back in really about, 2010 or so. I, at the time, was living in Cleveland, Ohio. I had a brother-in-law that came to me and just told me all about single-family flips and hard money lending. And he had identified a group in Miami-Dade County that was doing the actual flips. We became hard money lenders, pretty successful. We did probably 15 or 20 different flips and really made some decent returns. But I was working for a private equity company at the time in the Cleveland market, and that job was winding down. So I landed a gig in Houston, Texas. I'm currently a W-2 employee for a large academic medical institution in Houston. Contrary to a lot of different real estate people, I really don't want to quit and enjoy what I'm doing and can do both nights and weekends. But got my start in multifamily by attending a lifestyles conference here in Houston, and then was in the Sumrock organization in Dallas for a couple of years. And most recently, I've landed in the Rod Khalifa organization. I'm a coach for his students, and I really enjoy giving back to the new students along the way and hopefully building into them. So I'm both a GP, a general partner, and an LP. GP in about KP 250 doors, and I continue to invest in. I will always invest as an LP because I just really like the asset class and think it's really good. I'm in several thousand doors in different states and around the country, and try to spread my risk across different platforms that way.
The beauty of syndication, owning a small part of a lot, man. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I have a couple of siblings that think I'm rich because they see the number of units I'm in, and you say, you got to understand I own, but that's the whole, right? As you said, the advantage, it's a small piece of a big pie, spreading risk, just like a mutual fund. I mean, you just own a small piece of something big. So
1,000%. So you're the first person that I think I've talked to who isn't just, I guess, for the primary piece of their business, investing as a GP. So, you've bounced around through a couple of different organizations. Do you have anything that you really like about each of the ones that you went through? Because I think people are always curious. Most don't go through multiple.
I don't know if that says something about me or the organizations, but that I bounced around. But no, I want to be mostly, I am a GP looking for opportunities to buy with partners here in the Houston market. But concerning those organizations, I think they all are very good. And as I talk to new people along the way, I really encourage them to get involved in those educational arms. Even the GPs out there today, you got to continue your education someplace. You got to continue to learn, network. Those are great opportunities to network. I like them. I like them all. I just think that they're all morphing over the time period. But I think I would say the lifestyles tends to be very Houston centric. Dallas is, or I should say, Sumrock is kind of Dallas centric, and I think Khalifa is more national. And so they all have similar products, just different little bit different approaches. And like I'm sure you have your stomping grounds where you go to get education at there. It's really just the networking and the education to meet fellow GPs and fellow investors, and always finding new investors at those opportunities.
Awesome. Awesome. So, with having so much money spread across all these projects, they're all going perfect. You're making money everywhere. And I mean, it's probably kind of the end of the episode, right? Invest in multifamily. It's good.
And we should hang up now, but but yes, I mean, for the most part, it's going very good. But as you tell people, and as you know, it's a business, right? And so bad things happen. Not bad things. Bad things can happen in business, and it's how you plan for those and you mitigate the risk. I think the story I wanted to tell today is my very first investment as an LP. I had gotten involved in, and I mentioned in the Sumrock organization. I had identified, was still working, was still just learning, and I didn't want to jump into the GP market. So I wanted to find somebody to invest in and learn from them. And I found a sponsor that the terminology we use today is know, like, and trust. He was a corporate guy. I tend to gravitate towards corporate people when I'm investing as an LP. Been a very successful entrepreneur as well. And he identified this lovely asset in Port Arthur, Texas. Now, your listening audience is saying, where the heck is Port Arthur, Texas? It's right on the Gulf, about 150 miles due east of Houston, probably about halfway between Houston and Lake Charles in Louisiana, if that means anything to you. But it's right on the Gulf. It's in the petrochemical industry. Great blue collar community. Has the demographics that us syndicators are looking for: blue collar, value add opportunity. The group, the syndicator group, 3 people. Lead one I really knew well. The other 2 I didn't know too well. They identified this 225 unit asset. I don't know. I think it was built in the early 80s. But it had fallen upon hard times, and the city had taken it over. The city of Port Arthur, Texas had taken it over. And a developer had purchased it from the city and was in the process of completely rehabbing it, just doing everything new to it. So 225 doors, B-, C+ property in Port Arthur, Texas. A bridge loan, because it was only 77% occupied at the time. So there's one lesson I learned the hard way is what's a bridge loan. And as a sponsor today, we all try to take out long-term debt, but a bridge loan. And the model was, or the plan was, pretty simple. All you had to do is, it was at 77% occupancy, and all you had to do is lease it up, get above 90% for 90 days, and take out agency debt and refinance it, and we'd be churning money.
Man, it sounds simple enough. I mean, come on, who can't do that, right? I mean,
well, and really, so it is true. It really did have a good story, but I learned years later this has, this is increased risk, and this is a true value add. But anyhow, the good news is so the sponsorship group, we take it down. This is in was August of 14 we bought this. August of 2014 we bought this. Property manager, and it comes on board. They start leasing it up, and in September of 2015, 13 months later, we refinanced it. We got it up to above 90% and refinanced it. Got out 60% of our money. Now at this time, I'm thinking I'm a pretty smart guy. My first investment, 13 months later, I get 60% of my money back. And so, we're all high-fiving and feeling pretty good about the opportunity. Mm-hmm. So that was in September of 15. And then, so the story goes, and this is when the crap hits the fan, is in early 16, we learned from the sponsorship group that the property manager had been committing fraud, that they had basically been overstating occupancy and overstating revenues on the financial statements. and leading, those, which basically then you can appreciate the lender gets a little angry because they just lent us 60% of the initial investment back on what they now learn are fraudulent books. So the lender doesn't take that too nicely. They start implementing all their contingencies with the loan agreements. They basically take over all the cash accounts. So the cash has to go to a lockbox. The owner and the property manager have no control over the cash at that point in time. All the funds start flowing to a lockbox. And the sponsorship group was lucky enough to find a replacement property manager. But at that point, the bank has to approve the new property manager. You're shaking your head, and sounds like you've got your own horror stories. But the bank has to approve the property, and it's a CMBS loan, so it's even further complicated. For your listeners, that adds more complexity than an agency loan. The CMBS lender has to approve the property manager. They just approve almost everything you do at the property at that point in time. And so we change property managers. We get them to do it months later. We actually, we really start on what you'd almost call it forensic accounting, trying to figure out what really happened. Vendor invoices start climbing up, piling up, I should say. We're trying to sort all this out. And then, so we're muddling, and it's kind of interesting because the lead sponsor doesn't communicate as well as he did in the good months. And so I'm pinging him and asking him where it's at, and getting little or no responses other than, what he's doing. He's not, the sponsorship group isn't avoiding us or isn't being fraudulent themselves. They just didn't have any real good news to tell. But the property manager in early 17, we transferred. So what you may recall on the great coast of Texas, what happened in September of 2017, Hurricane Harvey hits.
There was a little bit of water there.
Just a tad, just a tad. So Hurricane Harvey hits, and this property literally sits 3 miles off the ocean. So it takes out the first floor of 225 units. I mean, it wipes out 112 units with 3 feet of water in them. Displace all the tenants, clear the units pretty much. There's still a lot of people after the water subsided, people stayed in some of the second floor units, but now we had a bad story go worse. And so we were in a bad cash position. We start to fall behind on the property payments to the bank, on the principal and interest. And again, we fall into technical default so the lender starts to slow the rehab dollars on that because they're trying to figure it out themselves. They're slowing down reimbursements for the rehab. So where does the cash come? And this compounding bad news comes in. And I guess that if there's good news at this point, the good news is that the lead sponsor, in order to keep the property moving forward, pumps in a lot of his own personal money.
Wow.
To float the rehab.
Yeah.
He pumps in probably I don't know exactly, but $400,000 to $500,000 of his own money to keep this going.
Hero.
A lot of people want to be profitable multifamily operators but lack the knowledge, deal flow experience, and capital to be successful. They often try to overcome these challenges out of order, slowing or eliminating their ability to get their next deal done. We've developed a framework that allows them to gain the knowledge they need to find profitable deals. When they do, they create the time and location freedom, as well as the generational wealth they desire for their family. The Myers methods of multifamily investing have proved to be the fastest way to establish credibility and profitably grow an apartment portfolio. If you want to know more about our 4-step process, jump over to myersmethods.com to get our free 4-step guide to getting into multifamily investing. Let's get back to that.
Man of integrity, and the story gets better. But before the story gets better, it gets worse. So fraud, a flood, and then July 4th, 2018, we have a fire on the property. and regrettably 3 young children die in the fire. Yes. So a fraud, a hurricane, and now a fire that takes out probably 15 to 20 units. And regrettably, 3 children were died in the fire. A mother tragically left her 3 children alone in the apartment while she took one of her other sick children to the hospital on kind of an emergency basis. But this is where the sharks start to circle, as you know, if you own a property, and whenever there's going to be a fire sooner or later if you're an operator on a property. But you don't want death to occur, and when death does occur, the lawyers start to circle, and just like sharks, they're swarming and just waiting for lawsuits, and so it can't be avoided. So we got insurance. We're semi-protected, but again, the property has another hit, as we would say, and we bring in yet another property manager trying to turn it around. And so after, that's July 4th, 2018, 2019, fast forwarding comes, and we start to really turn positive. We have some positive news. Rehab is winding up. We're leasing up units. Cash flow is starting to reappear. We still got the fire lawsuits out there, but it is beginning to make a lot of positive progress. Now, we're still behind on the mortgage payments, but the essence of it all is that it starts to look attractive, and hey, we might be able to turn this around and sell it even for a profit, of all things, if this baby really leases up. And at that time, though, this is where another lesson learned is you realize the lender determines that, hey, there's meat on these bones. They're behind. I can basically take this property back, and I can make the profit rather than letting them have the profit.
Loan to own, baby. Here we go. Starve them out, cut the money off so they can't finish the project. Come on.
You've been there, it sounds like, regrettably. And so in 19, it's starting to hit on all cylinders. We're starting to think about possibly selling this. It begins to turn positive cash flow, fighting with the lead sponsors, fighting with the lender, trying to negotiate, navigate a soft landing for everybody. And then we all know what happens in 2020, right? The global pandemic hits. And so things start to slow down again. Lender basically starts the foreclosure process. And so I'm going to let you ask questions here in a second, but the good news is the sponsor is able to navigate a sale while we still own it, and we get all of our money back as an investors. He gets all of our money back, and this is another lesson learned, before he paid himself back. Now, as you know, the syndication operating agreement allows him to pay himself first in the order of liquidation, to pay himself back first, then us. But this guy is a stand-up guy and pays the LPs back and then takes his own share. Long story, he ends up getting 95% of his money back. But the point of it is the integrity of this guy is outstanding. You can't get that when you're meeting him in advance. But so we sell it in 2020. We all get our money back, zero gain, but I didn't lose anything after 6 years as an LP. But tremendous lessons learned, Jerome.
Wow. So what would you do different? Like what have you put in place now? I mean, to protect yourself, because you said you were a KP on that deal, right?
I was not a KP. I was an LP on that one. I was okay. Just an LP. But I mean, I think the things, one lesson learned is the guy I know real well who's a lead sponsor says, don't ever do a CMBS loan. Don't ever do a CMBS loan. They're just much more onerous and slow moving. And, this is in Texas. The corporate office was in Chicago. He flew to corporate office a couple of times to try and meet with people to make things happen. And just unbelievable. CMBS loan, 2. The other one is, I think, make sure you got a really good deep sponsorship team with some good pockets, right? Because you never know. And that's why agencies want to make sure syndicators have the net worth requirement on the loan so that they can foot some of this stuff if it goes bad. Communicate with your investors is another major lessons learned for me. I think, I know he was just working it. He was spending 10, 15 hours a week, every week at this property, trying to make it happen for a year plus. But communication is key. And then the other big lesson for me, Jerome's takeaway, I mean, is property management. As we know, that makes all the difference. You got people on site, these multi-million-dollar assets that are making 40, 50, maybe $60,000. And they're really the gatekeepers for us. So the quality property management is another big one for me.
So that's the thing I've been most curious about through this journey you've taken us on. Like, how do you overstate the earnings? Because the money's got to go in the bank at some point. Where did the money come from, or how do they correct the books? Like that?
Well, I regret I don't have all the clear details on that, but my assumption is that we were sending the financial reports to the bank. And, since the bank at that time did not have access to the cash, all they're seeing is a financial statement. They obviously never verified it to the bank statement that we were using until things got really deep. And then that's when they implement their covenants, their loan covenants agreements, and they take over all of the cash, as I said, coming in with the lockbox. So they can count every penny of it.
Yep. They want to see everything when you lose control, and they want to control everything because they're not going to lose their money. If anybody loses money, it's going to be the people who put the risk capital in or the equity. Yeah. So you really walked us down the whole journey. I just wish there was something I could get you to tell the listeners that they can protect themselves. There's a lot of folks who say, hey, you can get in this game. You don't need any cash. You don't need any credit. You don't need any experience, blah, 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 blah. I just don't subscribe to that. And it's because of situations like this. Now, I think I know who this operator was, and kudos to him for, reaching in his pocket and trying to make it right. And then landing the plane or crash landing the plane. He got hit with 3 things, right? He got the flood, he had the pandemic, and he had somebody stealing from him, and he couldn't even see that it was happening. Those things.
Yeah. The fraud, the flood, the hurricane. I mean, the fraud, the hurricane, the fire, and then the pandemic.
Oh, see, I really want to leave the fire out because the kids died. That part just kind of broke my heart. And what's really interesting, and well, let's go down this path, right? So did your insurance company cover the flood and the lost revenue since you were down?
Yeah, they did eventually. But again, it's the short-term implication that that you got to rebuild it and lease it back up before they're going to refund you the money. And so that literally took a couple of years. By the time the flood hit, they were rebuilt and then re-leased back up because the CMBS loan was slow to release the rehab dollars because it had fallen in technical default, and it was just really slow, and it just took literally a couple of years to do that, and then that's when the fire hit. So again, for the operators out there, everybody knows this, but what is proper capitalization of a property, and how much do you have in reserves? And we always want to pay investors and look great in that eye, but bad things can happen.
And so why the owner, the deal lead didn't just do a capital call and make it everybody's problem instead of pushing cash into the deal?
I never asked him that specifically, but I believe it's one, I think he had the wherewithal to do it, and he is the eternal optimist. I believe he thought it was going to happen quicker, but then it was just a compounding effect. But But I don't have the specific answer to that. I'm gonna chalk it up to his integrity, solely his integrity, and wanting to, because as you know, and again, the integrity is as a syndicator, as an operator. Once you do that, it's a small world, right? Your ability to raise money in the future is going to be very limited. And he, being the stand-up, he had some deep pockets. He was able to do it. And I believe that's the motivation, just to do the right thing and not to just want to keep his own reputation.
Yeah. Kudos to him. I mean, for one, amassing the wealth so he could do it too, being willing to put it on the line. So last question, Randy, is what words of wisdom do you have for the listeners?
Well, I think, for the operators out there, it's all the things we just talked about, from capitalization to property management to insurance. On the coastal properties today, those rates are just skyrocketing in the Southwest, Houston, Phoenix, Florida. As everybody knows, we were just looking at a property yesterday in San Antonio, and this isn't going to be any better. So just make sure you continue to be properly insured. Is that way. For the LP investor, for those listening, I really just say it goes back to knowing the risk, knowing the operator, right? It's the old horse and the jockey illustration. What's the most important, the horse or the jockey in a horse race? And where the jockey is the syndicator and the horse is the submarket. In the multifamily illustration, it's know the operator and get to know them. Ask them questions. Be active and engaged versus just putting down money and not looking at it again for 5 years. Good things do happen in multifamily, as we all know, but they're not always blue skies and the Disney story.
Risk and reward have to be normalized, because if you don't do it, you can really disappoint it, man.
And the other one I'm going to add to real quick is I would say, be patient for the long term. As an LP, this ended up not good, but it wasn't terrible, it wasn't bad. And I've invested with this guy since, and I probably will too again, because he's got a friend for life in Randy, just by the fact that he was such a stand-up guy. So integrity, and I don't know how you monitor that or how you get to know that, but you do over a period of time as an investor and as an operator, you get to know people and their integrity. So it's important.
Sure. Well, Randy, this was phenomenal. I don't think anybody's dealt with the floor plagues in a single deal and just going along for the ride, because there's not a whole lot you could do as a LP. But I mean, being there to see the journey and finding somebody who you feel comfortable giving your money to and knowing that they're going to be a great steward. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing. And to the listeners, the Pack's with you. We'll talk soon. A favor, give us a 5-star rating, give us a review, and share this with somebody who's interested in multifamily investing. Until the next time, the Pack is with you.